All right, welcome. Our topic today is communication and control. So, really, what we're going to look at today is how our brain communicates with our body and how our body communicates with our brain, and then how our brain responds to those things. That's the control part. And I'm going to go pretty quick, so make sure you pause when you need to pause and rewind when you need to rewind. All right, so what do I mean by using our brain or using our nervous system? Well, I want you to look at these 5 things and tell me which of these things does not use your nervous system. Eating, playing a musical instrument, reading a book, running, sleeping. Okay, do you have an answer? If you don't have an answer yet, press pause, write down an answer. When you eat, your brain has to process your food and taste and things like that. When you're playing a musical instrument, you're using both physical movement and you're also reading. You're reading sheet music and interpreting that. When you read a book, a lot of people have a kind of a film strip playing in their mind as they're reading a book. They have a vision of what the author is trying to share with them. When you're running, your body is moving, so your brain has to obviously make that happen. And when you're sleeping, your brain is actually rearranging all the things you learned that day into more appropriate places so that you can access. So your nervous system is your body's like central command post. It's what happens. So there's a couple of different things that goes on. Your nervous system gathers and interprets information. So if you're reading a book, it has to gather all the pictures of the letters and the words and figure out what that means. And then it responds to that information as needed. Another example would be if you grab a hot pan. Your brain is going to gather the information that says, this is hot, and it's too hot for my body cells to handle, and it's going to respond with, let go of that pot, so you don't injure yourself. And you have 2 pieces to this. The first one is the central nervous system, and what that consists of is your brain and spinal cord. And that processes everything that happens in your body. And there's a lot of information coming in, like things you hear, things you see, things you touch, things you smell. The second part is the peripheral nervous system. This is everything else. So this is, if you pet your cat and it feels soft, that would be a function of the peripheral nervous system. If you kick a soccer ball, that would be peripheral nervous system. Remember way back when we looked at animal cells. Animal cells don't necessarily have to be any particular shape because the animal cells organize themselves into tissues. And so they have a group of them working together to do the same job. Now, plant cells do have to be in a particular shape because the plant has to be able to grow big and tall like a tree so that it can push upwards and get more sunlight. So every cell is a certain shape because of the job it does. Most of the animal cells work together as a team, so they don't necessarily have to be a particular shape, but plant cells have to support, so they have to be more of that brick shape to be able to do that. Now this is a nervous system cell. It doesn't look like any other kind of cell. It is very unique. You can see up here, this is kind of the main part of the cell. This is where you can see its nucleus is, so that's kind of the brain of the cell. All these little wires kind of coming off of here, these are called dendrites. And dendrites attach to all kinds of different cells by the axon. So what I would suggest you do is draw a picture of this in your notebook and label dendrite, nucleus, axon, and then terminal buttons. The terminal buttons are the piece that attach to the dendrite. So you have all these super long cells all over your body, kind of all attached together through all these little wires. And it's kind of appropriate that they look like wires because the nervous system sends messages using electricity. So press pause, draw that in your notebook, label those couple of things. All right, so nerve cells are called neurons, and they're very special. Everything is built to do a job. So this neuron's job, is to transmit information. So what better shape than to be pretty much a bunch of wires connected to other wires? They are similar to other cells because they do have kind of the centralized body there. They do have a few organelles, and they have a nucleus. But other than that, they're not really. So here's another different kind of artist's rendering. You can see messages going and receiving and all kinds of cool. You have around 100 billion neurons, so that's pretty awesome. And so each neuron can receive messages from 10,000 other neurons. So all those little dendrites sticking off the main body can be connected to up to 10,000 different neurons. So if you think of like trying to remember something, your brain is going to go on the fastest path through the least amount of neurons to get there. And they can also send messages to 1,000 different neurons. This is why we're able to look at a person and recognize who they are like right away, or smell something and be like, oh yeah, that's barbecue. Because everything is connected to everything else, we can do things really, really quick. So the parts of the neuron, the dendrite are the short pieces up here, and the axon is this long tail, and they send messages out, and that's important to remember. Your axons, there's one that goes from the middle of your back all the way down to your toes. So the cell part is in the middle of your back, and then the axon runs all the way down your leg, all the way down your foot to the end of your toes, which is really cool. And then the axon terminal, or the terminal buttons, that connects to other cells, and it passes that. So what kind of information is gathered? So you may be saying, well, we have these neurons that are gathering information. Well, what? In your skin, we have these really cool nerves, and they're called receptors, so they receive information. And the biggest thing here is these receptors recognize change. So if you've ever gone to somebody else's house and it smelled differently than your house, you're like, oh, this is a unique smell. And then after a while, you just kind of forget about it. It's not necessarily that you forgot about it, but it's that your sensory neurons got used to it. They recognized, okay, we smelled this. If it's something very bad or very scary, we're obviously going to leave. If it's something that's not very bad or scary, we're going to stay here and we'll be fine. So they only recognize change. It's kind of like when you walk into a room and it's a little bit warmer than it was in the hallway. And after a while, you just kind of get used to it. It's because the sensory neurons only detect change. So we have sensory neurons and we have motor neurons. So the sensory neurons will bring information up to the brain. Your brain figures out what that means and then sends a message down saying, hey, do this. So let's take that example of going into a room and it's hot. But this time, let's make this room like really hot, like 95 degrees. So you walk in and you say, wow, this room is sweltering. But you have to be in class anyways. So what happens? You start getting hot. When you get hot, you start to sweat. Well, what happened was your receptor neurons in your skin told your brain it's very, very hot in here. And your brain said, well, there's two ways you can cool off. You can take your clothes off, which is highly not recommended in this situation, or you can sweat. So what happens is your neuron sends a message down through motor neurons down to your sweat glands that are in your skin, and it squeezes a little bit of the water out, and that goes onto the top of your skin. And then if that water came from your body, it's the same temperature as your body, and if it evaporates, it takes all that heat with it. So that's how you cool off, by sweating. When we look at just nerves in general, the nerve is a bunch of axons. So a nerve would be a few axons connected together. And most of them have both sensory neurons and motor neurons kind of on the same path, so that they don't have to take up. In your peripheral nervous system, we have something called somatic nervous system. And this is what you choose to do. So this is conscious control of things. Writing notes, texting, smiling, tracking, of course. Oh, here we go.
Guess what? I've got a fever. And the only prescription is more evolution of dance.
again. So obviously the point, dancing is part of your somatic nervous system. It's conscious control, and you can get better at it, folks. So the second part is autonomic nervous system. And that's things you don't have to think about. Breathing, digestion, your heart going. The main function here is that it wants to make everything the same. Homeostasis means balance. So it wants to make sure you digest your food at a certain rate, your breathing is at a certain rate, everything is in balance. And when we look at your brain, you have a cerebrum, which is all your memory, thoughts, functions like that. You have a medulla, and you have your cerebellum. So the cerebrum, it's where you think, it's where you keep your memories, and it's where you use your senses and where you use your voluntary movement. It's divided into two sides called hemispheres. Your left side controls, the left side of your cerebrum controls the right side of your body. The right side of your cerebrum controls the left side of your body. So in the middle of your brain there's a crossing of nerves. The cerebellum is kind of towards the back, and this is like your balance, and that's kind of the big one, your balance and your sensory information. So this is so you don't fall down. Your medulla is what connects your brain and your spinal cord, and this is a lot of those involuntary processes. This is what's really scary when people get hit in the back of the head, because if your medulla is damaged, then it affects your breathing rate or your heart rate, which means it's very possible you could die. So you really have to be careful. Your spinal cord is a really, really thick group of axons, and it connects your brain to the rest of your body. On your spinal cord, they go two ways. They go to the brain figures things out, and they send it out. And your spinal cord is incredibly important, because if there's a break in the spinal cord, no messages can go past it, either way. So let's move this out of the way. Let's draw. So here's our person. Hi. All right. So now if the spinal cord is broken here, that means nothing can be felt from the rest of the body. And also, when this message goes up, it stops right there, because it can't cross this broken path right here. So that means if we took there we go, big old hatchet, and we chop this person in the leg. Oh, there's all the blood. Blood's going everywhere. Oh! This message of being chopped in the leg will stop here, which means your brain cannot process pain. So they would feel absolutely no pain. Isn't that crazy? Now, messages from the brain also stop here. So if that person is saying, move your foot, move your foot, move your foot, nothing will happen. It just can't. It's like a big ocean, and you just can't jump across. So that's it for the communication and control. Make sure that you review this information. It's important, and it can definitely help you as we move forward.